The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wide under a dome of crystal that showed the stars beyond. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows, their voices mixing together like waves on a distant shore. Ambassador Guan pulled her hood lower over her face and listened carefully from her seat in the back row. Today the council was talking about old stories. Very old stories. "The humans are nothing but tales told to children," said council member Vexeri, his forearms waving as he spoke. His blue skin gleamed under the chamber lights. No species could do what these stories claim. Guan kept her face calm, but her heart beat faster. She had been coming to these meetings for 3 years. Now, everyone thought she was from a small world on the outer edge of the galaxy. They thought her people were just another quiet species that looked almost like the old human legends. They were wrong. Elder Cormoth stood up slowly. His ancient voice filled the chamber. But the stories come from many worlds. Many different species tell the same tales. How can this be if humans never existed? Juan watched as other council members leaned forward. This was always the most interesting part. When the old ones spoke of humans, even the doubters listened. Legends say humans could live anywhere, Cormoth continued. Hot worlds, cold worlds, worlds with poison air. They say humans could heal from wounds that would kill any of us. They say humans could bring peace between enemies who had fought for hundreds of years. A young council member with green scales laughed. Elder, with respect, these are fairy tales. No species is that adaptable. No species is that strong. Juan touched the small scar on her wrist. 3 years ago, a piece of metal had cut deep enough to see bone. Within 2 weeks, only this thin line remained. She was grateful for the long sleeves of her diplomatic robes. But what if they were real? Asked another voice. This came from Ambassador Kelris, whose people had gray skin and large dark eyes. What if humans really did exist, and something happened to them? The chamber grew quiet. This was dangerous territory. The Galactic Council preferred to think that all the major species were known. The idea that an entire species could vanish made them uncomfortable. Vexeri slammed one of his hands on his desk. Enough of this foolishness. You waste time on children's stories while real problems need solving. The trade disputes between the Nexus worlds and the Outer Rim grow worse. Each day Juan almost smiled. If only they knew that one of their mythical humans was sitting right here, helping to solve those very trade problems. For 3 years she had been working quietly to ease tensions between different worlds. Small successes, nothing too noticeable. Nothing that would make anyone ask questions. As the debate continued, Giwan let her mind wander to the old stories. They were mostly true, though some details had grown larger over time. Humans could adapt to many environments, but it took time and often caused pain. They could heal quickly, but not magically. They were good at bringing different groups together, but it required patience and understanding. She remembered her grandfather's words from long ago. We are not gods, Juan. We are just stubborn. When others give up, we keep trying. When others see only differences, we look for what is the same. The great chamber doors opened with a soft sound. A messenger hurried in, his breathing heavy. He moved quickly to the council leader's platform and whispered something urgent. Council. Leader Thane held up a hand for silence. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. We have received a priority message from the frontier worlds. Salvage crew has made an unusual discovery. Giwan felt a chill run down her spine. The message is from Captain Minho of the independent salvage vessel Starwalker, Thane continued. He reports finding a derelict ship of unknown design in the Void sector. The ship appears to be very old, possibly ancient. Several council members began talking at once. Ancient ships sometimes contained valuable technology or historical artifacts, but Juan noticed something else in the council leader's voice. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. The ship contains what appear to be stasis pods, Thane said, and the chamber fell silent again. The energy readings suggest the pods are still active. Giwan's breath caught in her throat. She forced herself to remain still, to show only polite interest like the other diplomats around her. Elder Cormath leaned forward. How many pods? The initial scan shows 12, Thane replied. Captain Minho is requesting council guidance on how to proceed. Across the galaxy, on a small world at the edge of known space, Captain Minho stood in the cargo bay of his ship. He was a practical man who had spent his life finding valuable things in the dark between stars. But the object floating in his cargo bay made him nervous. The derelict ship was small, maybe built for 20 people at most. Its hull was made of metals his scanner could not identify. Strange symbols covered the outer surface, symbols that seemed to shift slightly when he was not looking directly at them. Captain called his engineer Borum from near the airlock. "I am getting power readings from inside. Whatever is in there, it is still running after who knows how many years." Minho rubbed his chin. His crew had found the ship drifting in a part of space that most people avoided. The void sector was mostly empty, just old asteroid fields and dying stars. Nothing valuable had ever been found there before. "The whole design does not match any known species," said his pilot. Yunji, she was young but had a good eye for details. "But some of these markings look familiar. It's like something from the old database files." "What kind of old files?" Minho asked. Yunji looked uncertain. "Historical archives, mythology sections, stories about the lost species." Minho felt his stomach tighten. "You mean the human legends?" Maybe, Youngji said quietly. "The proportions of the ship are right. It's built for beings about the right size. And the technology level seems very advanced, just like the stories say." In the cargo bay, status lights on the ancient ship began to blink. Slowly at first, then faster. Deep inside the derelict vessel, systems that had waited in darkness for thousands of years began to wake up, back in the council chamber. Guan sat perfectly still as the debate grew louder around her. Some members wanted to send a scientific team to study the discovery. Others worried about disturbing something that might be dangerous. "You should be careful," warned Vexari. "Ancient ships sometimes contain hazards, diseases, weapons, unstable technology." But Elder Kormoth stood again, his old eyes bright with curiosity, where they contained answers to very old questions. As the council argued, Juan touched a small device hidden in her robes. A message appeared on the tiny screen, sent through channels that officially did not exist. The message was short, but it made her blood run cold. "Multiple sites activating. The signal is spreading. They are waking up." For 3 years, Giwan had lived quietly among the aliens who ruled the galaxy. For 3 years, she had pretended to be something she was not. But now, across the dark spaces between stars, her people were beginning to stir from their long sleep. The age of myths was about to end. The age of truth was about to begin. Captain Minho could not sleep. For 3 days he had been staring at the ancient ship in his cargo bay. The status lights blinked faster now, creating patterns that almost looked like a countdown. His crew was getting nervous. Captain Borum called from the engine room. "I am picking up communication signals. Very faint, but they are coming from inside that ship." Minho hurried to the bridge. On his screens, waves of energy pulsed in regular patterns. Signals were weak but clearly artificial. Someone or something inside the derelict was trying to communicate. "Can you decode it?" he asked. Borum shook her head. "Language is completely unknown. But the mathematical pattern suggests high intelligence. Whoever built this ship was very advanced." Yunji looked up from her pilot station. "Captain, I have been thinking. What if we are not the first to find ships like this? What if there are others waking up across the galaxy?" Before Minho could answer, his communication system chimed. A priority message was coming in through encrypted channels. These were the kinds of messages that people paid good money to keep secret. The message was short. Ancient tech awakening. On 12 worlds, buyers interested. High price for first contact data. Minho felt his hand shake slightly. If ships like this were waking up everywhere, it meant something big was happening. Something that could change everything, far across the galaxy. On Research Station Kepler 7, Dr. Hannah was having the same realization. She sat alone in her laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data from across known space. As a xenarchaeologist, she studied the remains of ancient civilizations. But today, those civilizations seemed to be coming back to life. "Impossible," she whispered to herself, but the data did not lie. Energy signatures matching ancient human technology were appearing, on world after world. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. Hannah had spent her entire career studying human artifacts. Most scientists thought she was wasting her time on myths and legends. But Hannah had found too many pieces of evidence to dismiss. Tools. That should not exist. Buildings designed for beings that looked remarkably human, and always the same advanced technology that no other species had ever achieved. She touched a hidden panel on her desk, secret communication system activated, one that connected to a network that officially did not exist. The network of people. Who knew the truth about humanity? People who carried human blood in their veins, even if they looked different on the outside. "This is Dr. Hannah," she said quietly into the communicator. "Priority alert. The awakening has begun. Across the galaxy." Hidden receivers picked up her message. In marketplaces, in government offices, in remote research stations, in busy spaceports, people who had been waiting for this moment began to move. On his salvage ship, Minho was unaware that he held the key to the greatest secret in Galactic history. He stood in his cargo bay, watching as the ancient ship's hull began to glow with soft blue light. The metal seemed to be warming up from inside. Captain Yunji called nervously. "Internal scans show movement in the ship. Something is definitely alive in there." Minho nodded grimly. "If someone comes out of that ship, they are going to need help." Inside the ancient vessel, systems that had waited in darkness for thousands of years were finally completing their startup sequence. Climate controls activated, bringing frozen air back to life. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark since before the current galactic civilization began. In the deepest part of the ship, 12 stasis pods lined the walls of a small chamber. For millennia, they had protected their sleeping occupants from the cold of space and the passage of time. Now, as energy flowed through their systems once more, the pods began their revival process. The first to stir was Deho, former strategic commander of the Earth Defense Forces. His eyes opened slowly, his mind struggling to process where he was. The last thing he remembered was entering the stasis pod as Earth's final evacuation ships prepared to leave the home system. That had been over 3,000 years ago. His pod hissed open, and Deho fell forward onto his hands and knees. His body felt weak after the long sleep. Around him, other pods were beginning to open as well. His crewmates were waking up too. "Status report," he managed to say, his voice rough. From disuse, a holographic display flickered to life in front of him. The ship's artificial intelligence had survived the long journey. "Commander Deho," the AI said in a calm voice. "Revival process is complete. Current location is unknown. Warning. External sensors detect non-human life forms approaching our position." Deho forced himself to stand. 3,000 years. Everything he had known was gone. Earth was probably a dead world by now. The human colonies they had tried to protect had either survived or fallen long ago. Now aliens were coming too. Investigate their ship. On Minho's vessel. The cargo bay suddenly filled with breathable atmosphere as the ancient ship's airlocks opened. A figure appeared in the doorway, tall and lean, wearing clothes that looked like they belonged in a museum. Mish stared in shock. The being looked almost exactly like the humans in the old legends. 2 arms, 2 legs, hair on the top of the head, skin that was pale from the long sleep. But there was something in the way he moved, the way he held himself, that spoke of strength and determination. Deho stepped carefully onto the deck of the salvage ship. His training told him to assess the situation, identify threats, and establish communication. But his heart was pounding with a single question. What had happened to the galaxy while he slept? "I am Commander Deho of the Earth Defense Forces," he said in the old human language. "Can you understand me?" Minho's translation device worked frantically, trying to match the sounds to known languages. After a moment, it provided a rough translation. "Am Captain Minho," he replied carefully. "This is my ship. You have been sleeping in that vessel for a very long time." Deho nodded slowly. He had expected this. The evacuation plan had always included the possibility of very long journeys through space. How long? He asked. Minho checked his computer. Based on the radioactive decay in your ship's hull, approximately 3,000 standard years. Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. Then it is time to see what the galaxy has become, he said. Across the stars, similar scenes were playing out on a dozen worlds. Humans were waking up from their long sleep, finding themselves in a galaxy that had forgotten they ever existed. Some were found by curious salvage crews like Minho. Others were discovered by research teams, or accidentally awakened by mining operations. Each awakening human brought with them knowledge from Earth's golden age. Scientists who understood technologies that current civilizations could barely imagine. Engineers who could build machines that seemed like magic to modern aliens. Soldiers who had been trained in tactics that no current military had ever seen. But most importantly, they brought with them the human spirit that had survived the destruction of their home world and the long exile in the dark between stars. Dr. Hannah received reports from her secret network as the day progressed. 12 confirmed awakenings, possibly more. Each human was confused, disoriented, but adapting quickly to their new circumstances. It was beginning, just as the old plans had said it would. She opened a secure channel to Ambassador Giwan on Nexus Prime. "The sleepers are waking," she transmitted. "The time of hiding may be over." Giwan received the message while sitting in her diplomatic quarters. She looked out her window at the alien city below, with its towers reaching toward the stars and its streets filled with dozens of different species. Soon, she thought, they would learn that humans were not myths after all. The question was, would they welcome humanity back, or would they see the returning humans as a threat to everything they had built? Either way, the galaxy was about to change forever. The reports came flooding into the Galactic Council faster than anyone could process them. In just 5 days, sightings of unknown beings had been reported on 43 different worlds. Beings that matched the ancient human descriptions perfectly. Ambassador Guan sat in the emergency council session, watching chaos unfold around her. Council members shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a storm of confusion and fear. "This cannot be coincidence," declared Vexeri, his forearms gesturing wildly. "These beings appear everywhere at once. This is an invasion." Elder Cormouth shook his ancient head. "Or it is exactly what the legends said would happen. The humans are returning." On the industrial world of Kepler-9, Engineer Kyung had been awake for only 2 days, but she was already changing everything around her. The mining colony where she had awakened was struggling with failing atmospheric processors. The alien workers had been ready to abandon the entire operation. Kyung studied their equipment. With eyes that had seen the terraforming of 12 worlds during humanity's golden age, to her, the problems were simple to fix. "You are using the wrong mixture ratio," she explained to Foreman Zelk, a being with thick gray skin and 6 eyes. "Your atmospheric processors are fighting each other instead of working together." Zelk watched in amazement as Kyung climbed into the massive machinery with tools that seemed too small for the job. Within hours, she had reorganized the entire system. The atmospheric processors began working better than they had in decades. "How did you know how to do this?" Zelk asked. Kyung smiled, wiping grease from her hands. My people have been building these machines for a very long time. Star systems away. Dr. Nari was having a similar impact on the research station where she had awakened. As a xenobiologist from Earth's golden age, she understood life forms in ways that current scientists could barely imagine. The research station had been struggling with a plague that was killing the native plants on their study world. Nothing they tried could stop the disease from spreading. Nari examined samples of the infected plants under their best microscopes. Within an hour, she had identified the problem and begun working on a solution. The plague is not a disease, she explained to Station Chief Corvin. It is the plants trying to adapt to changes in the soil chemistry. They are actually evolving, but the process is causing them to appear sick. She created a simple treatment that helped the plants complete their evolution safely. Within days, the dying world began to turn green again, but not everyone was happy about these miraculous solutions. On Nexus Prime, Supreme Commander Zekmoth gathered with other military leaders in a secure chamber deep beneath the council buildings. His species, the Hegemony, had controlled galactic military operations for over 1,000 years. They did not like surprises. "These humans are dangerous," Zekmoth declared, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "They understand technologies that we have forgotten. They solve problems that our best scientists cannot figure out. If we allow them to spread, they will make us obsolete." General Vorth nodded agreement. "The reports show they are incredibly adaptable. They learn our languages within days. They understand our machines as if they built them. This is not natural." "The old legends were warnings," added Admiral Kess. "They described humans as conquerors who could unite entire systems under their rule. We cannot allow this to happen." Unknown to them, Guan was listening to their conversation through a hidden surveillance system she had installed months earlier. Her diplomatic work had given her access to many secure areas. Now she was learning just how much danger her people were in. Meanwhile, on a remote world called Haven 7, physicist Wu Jin was discovering that his awakening had been no accident. The stasis pod that had protected him for 3,000 years had been programmed to activate when certain galactic conditions were met. Conditions that suggested the galaxy was ready for humanity's return. "The quantum resonance patterns are perfect," he explained to the salvage crew that had found him. "The galactic magnetic field has shifted into alignment. This is why we are all waking up now." Captain Sora, who had found Wujin's pod in an ancient asteroid base, did not understand the science, but she understood the implications. "You mean this was planned?" she asked. Wujin nodded. "Our ancestors knew that we would need to hide for a very long time. They programmed our ships to wake us when the galaxy had changed enough for us to return safely. But as more humans awakened across the galaxy, it became clear that not everyone considered their return safe. On the trade world of Merchant's Rest, human philosopher Sangmin found himself in the middle of a conflict that had been raging for 50 years. Two alien species, the Korthok and the Valani, had been fighting over mining rights to a rich asteroid field. Thousands had died, and no negotiator had ever been able to find a solution both sides would accept. Sangmin listened to both groups for 3 days. He did not try to convince them of anything. He just listened and asked simple questions. "Why do you mine these asteroids?" he asked the Korthok leader. "To feed our families," came the reply. "And why do you mine them?" he asked the Valani chief. "Do feed our children," was the answer. Sangmin smiled. "Then you both want the same thing. You want your people to survive and prosper. The asteroids are just tools to achieve this goal. What if there was a better tool?" Within a week, Sangmin had helped both species develop a joint terraforming project that would create new farmland for both groups. The asteroid mining became a shared operation to fund their mutual colony. The 50-year war ended with a celebration that lasted for days. News of this impossible peace agreement spread quickly through galactic communication networks. Other conflicts that had seemed unsolvable suddenly had parties calling for human mediators. This rapid success terrified the Hegemony leadership even more. Back on Nexus Prime, Juan realized her cover was becoming harder to maintain. During a Routine council session about trade disputes? She instinctively suggested a solution that was too sophisticated for her supposed background. Perhaps the Outer Rim worlds could establish a rotating credit system, she said, then immediately regretted it. The idea was brilliant and would solve the trade crisis completely. But it required knowledge of economic systems that her supposed species should not possess. Council leader Thane looked at her with new interest. Ambassador Juan, that is a remarkably advanced proposal. Where did your people learn such sophisticated economic theory? Juan felt her heart racing. We have studied the histories of many civilizations, she said carefully, but she could see doubt in several council members' eyes. Her years of careful hiding might be coming to an end. That night, she sat in her quarters reviewing the day's events. An urgent message arrived through her secret communication system. This was from Dr. Hannah. Emergency alert. Military buildup. Detected in hegemony space, they are mobilizing fleets. Recommend immediate evacuation protocols for all active agents. Q1 stared at the message, her mind racing. The hegemony was preparing for war, but war against whom? The humans were scattered across dozens of worlds, most of them just recently awakened and still weak from their long sleep, unless the hegemony knew something that she did not know. She activated her most secure communication channel and sent a message to every human she could reach. Storm coming. Prepare for hostile contact. The galaxy may not be ready for our return after all. Across the stars, humans who had been celebrating their awakening and their warm reception by many alien species suddenly found themselves preparing for the possibility of another war. It's like the war that had driven them into hiding 3,000 years ago. The age of myths was ending, but the age of legends was about to begin. The truth spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. What started as whispered rumors in spaceports became headline news on every world. The beings appearing everywhere were not just similar to the legendary humans. Ambassador Guan could no longer hide what she was. 3 council members had cornered her after the morning session, asking questions she could not answer without revealing herself. Your knowledge of galactic history is too detailed, said Council Member Thex, his reptilian eyes fixed on her face. Your understanding of ancient technologies is too complete. Are you really? Guan looked around the private meeting room. These 3 had always been her allies in the council. If she could not trust them, she could trust no one. She reached up and pulled back her hood. Her human features were clear in the bright light. Hair the color of dark earth, eyes that reflected depth and intelligence, skin that had the particular tone of someone born under Earth's yellow sun. My name is Juan, she said quietly, and I am human. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Council Member Reyes was the first to speak. You have been here for 3 years, living among us, working with us, helping us, Giwan corrected. Every trade agreement I negotiated, every conflict I helped resolve, every problem I worked on, I was trying to make the galaxy a better place. X leaned back in his chair. The legends say humans are dangerous, that you conquer and control. The legends are wrong, Guan said firmly. We help, we build, we bring people together. That is what we have always done. On the war-torn world of Broken Sky, this truth was being proven in the most dramatic way possible. Sangmin had been working there for only 10 days, but already the impossible was happening. 2 species had been fighting on Broken Sky for 60 years. The Korthok lived in the mountains and controlled the mineral deposits. The Zentari lived in the valleys and controlled the water sources. Neither could survive without what the other possessed. But their hatred ran too deep for any previous negotiator to bridge. Sangmin had not tried to negotiate. Instead, he had done something no one expected. He had moved into the border zone. Between the 2 territories, the most dangerous place on the planet, where soldiers from both sides came to fight and die. He built a small shelter there and began treating wounded soldiers from both armies. Korthok or Zentaria, it did not matter. To him, if they were hurt, he helped them heal. At first, both sides thought he was insane. Then they thought he was a spy. But after a week of watching him risk his life to save their people, they began to think something else entirely. Why do you help our enemies? asked Commander Thek of the Korthok forces. Sangman looked up from bandaging a Zentari soldier's wounds. I do not see enemies. I see people who are hurt and afraid. But they have been killing our people for decades. Your people have been killing theirs, Sangman replied calmly. How has that been working for everyone? By the end of the second week, something unprecedented began to happen. Soldiers from both sides started coming to Sangman's shelter not to fight but to talk. They began to see their enemies as individuals rather than monsters. The news of this miracles spread quickly. Within days, reporters from across the galaxy were traveling to Broken Sky to witness the impossible. A human was ending a 60-year war simply by showing both sides that peace was possible, but not everyone saw this as good news. Supreme Commander Zekmith watched the reports from Broken Sky with growing fury. In his command center, deep beneath Nexus Prime, he gathered his most trusted officers. Look at what they are doing, he snarled, pointing at the news feeds. One human ends a war that has raged for decades. One human solves problems that our best diplomats could not touch. What happens when there are hundreds of them? Thousands? General Vorth nodded grimly. They will make us obsolete. Who will need our military leadership when humans can create peace with words? Who will need our government when humans can solve every problem? Added Admiral Kess. Zekmoth activated a galaxy-wide communication system that reached every hegemony. Base all units. This is Supreme Commander Zekmoth. Operation Mythbreaker is now active. The human threat must be contained before it spreads further. Across dozens of star systems, hegemony warships began moving toward worlds where humans had been discovered. The first attack came without warning. Dr. Nari was working in her laboratory on Research Station Eka 12, developing new medicines from local plant life, when the explosions began. Through her window, she saw hegemony fighters strafing the station's outer sections. All humans are to be taken into protective custody, announced a voice over the station's communication system. Do not resist, and you will not be harmed. Henry knew that was a lie. She had lived through the last war against humanity. She recognized the signs of genocide when she saw them. She activated an emergency beacon that would warn other humans, and began destroying her research data. The medicines she had developed could revolutionize galactic healthcare, but she would not let them fall into the hands of people who wanted to use them as weapons. Similar attacks were happening across the galaxy. The mining world, where Engineer Kyung had been working, hegemony troops surrounded the atmospheric processing plant she had repaired. You are coming with us, Commander Zelk told her, but his voice was sad rather than threatening. I helped your people, Kyung said, confused. I fixed your machines. I made your world livable again. I know, Zelk replied. That is why this hurts so much. But the hegemony says you are dangerous. They say all humans must be controlled. Kyung looked around at the alien workers she had been helping. Many of them had tears in their eyes. We will not forget what you did for us, whispered one of the technicians. As the hegemony soldiers led her away, Kuhn realized that this was not just about her. This was about fear. Fear of change, fear of being replaced, fear of a universe where humans might make other species feel unnecessary. On Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most chaotic in its history. Half the members were shouting for the immediate protection of humans. The other half were demanding their immediate deportation. The humans have done nothing but help, declared Elder Cormouth, his ancient voice shaking with emotion. They have solved problems, ended wars, healed the sick. How can we repay their kindness with imprisonment? Vexari slammed his 4 hands on his desk. Because they are too good at it. Do you not see the danger? They make us look like children playing. With toys, what place will any of us have in a galaxy run by humans? Juan stood up in the middle of the chaos. Her hood was down now, her human features clear for all to see. The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. I have lived among you for 3 years, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. In that time, did I try to conquer you? Did I try to control you? Did I do anything except try to help make the galaxy a better place for everyone? You lied to us, accused Council Member Vorth. You pretended to be something you were not. I was because I was afraid, Giwan admitted. Afraid that you would react exactly as you are reacting now, with fear instead of hope, with suspicion instead of welcome. She walked down to the center of the chamber, where all could see her clearly. My people went into hiding 3,000 years ago because the galaxy was not ready for us then. Hoped that when we returned, things would be different. We hoped you would be ready for partnership instead of domination, for cooperation instead of conquest. And now? Asked Elder Cormouth quietly. G1 looked around the chamber at faces filled with fear, anger, hope, and confusion. Now I see that some of you are ready, she said, but others are not. The question is, which group will decide humanity's fate? Outside the council chambers, hegemony troops were already taking positions around the building. Supreme Commander Zekmoth had decided that the time for debate was over. The humans would be contained, controlled, or eliminated. The existing order of the galaxy would be preserved, no matter what the cost. But across the stars, on dozens of worlds where humans had awakened and begun to help, ordinary people were making a different choice. They were choosing to stand with the beings who had brought them hope instead of the military forces that brought them fear. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy was about to begin. And it would not be fought only with weapons. It would be fought with the most powerful force in the universe, the choice between fear and hope. War came over the galaxy like a storm breaking over calm seas. Hegemony warships appeared in orbit around 17 worlds where humans had been discovered. Their message was simple: surrender the humans or face destruction. On the mining colony of Kepler-9, Foreman Zelk stood in the central plaza surrounded by his workers. Above them, hegemony battleships blocked out the stars. A voice boomed down from the ships, cold and mechanical. This is Commander Vextel of the hegemony fleet. You are harboring a dangerous human. Deliver her to us within 1 hour, or we will take her by force. Zelk looked around at his people. These were miners and engineers, not soldiers. They had never fought a war in their lives, but Engineer Kyung had saved their world. She had fixed their broken atmosphere and given them a future. What do we do? Asked one of the younger workers. Zelke was quiet for a long moment, and he activated the colony's communication system. Commander Vextel, this is Foreman Zelk. Engineer Kyung is not a prisoner here. She is our friend. If you want her, you will have to go through all of us. The crowd of miners cheered. They knew they could not fight warships, but they would not abandon someone who had helped them. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On Research Station Echo 12, where Dr. Nari had been developing new medicines, the staff barricaded themselves in the laboratory sections. On the farming world of Green Valley, where human botanist Junho had helped end a plant plague, the entire population moved to protect the agricultural centers where he worked. But the most important battle was happening on Nexus Prime itself. Q1 stood in the Galactic Council chambers as hegemony soldiers surrounded the building. Through the crystal dome above, she could see their ships taking position in the sky. You need to leave, Elder Cormoth said urgently. They will not care that. You have diplomatic protection, Quan shook her head. If I run now, it proves everything they say about humans, that we are dangerous, that we cannot be trusted. But if you stay, they will capture or kill you, said Council Member Reyes. Then that is a risk I have to take. Outside the council building, Supreme Commander Zekmoth himself had arrived with a full battalion of troops. He activated his speakers to address the council. You are harboring a dangerous infiltrator. Send out the human called G1, and no one else needs to be hurt. Inside the chambers, half the council members were arguing for G1's surrender. The other half were demanding that the hegemony withdraw immediately, but G1 was no longer listening to the political debate. She was receiving urgent messages through her hidden communication system. Messages from humans across the galaxy who were under attack. Dr. Nari's station was being boarded. Engineer Kyung's colony was under bombardment. Philosopher Sangmin had been captured while trying to protect the peace. negotiations on Broken Sky, and then came the message that changed everything. "This is Commander Deho," came the transmission from Captain Minho's salvage ship. "Multiple human vessels are awakening in the Void Sector. We have weapons, we have shields, and we are very angry about what the hegemony is doing to our people." Heart leaped. She had forgotten about the military vessels that had been hidden with the civilian ships. Earth's final fleet, waiting in the dark spaces between stars for the day they might be needed again. Across the galaxy, ancient human warships were powering up systems that had slept for 3,000 years. Ships that had been built during humanity's golden age. When their technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy, Captain Mingji was the first human military commander to fully awaken. Her ship, the Endurance, had been drifting in an asteroid field when the activation signals reached it. Now she stood on her bridge, looking at tactical displays that showed hegemony forces attacking defenseless human civilians. "This is Captain Mingji to all human vessels," she broadcast on the old Earth's defense frequencies. "Operation Guardian Shield is now active. We protect our people." The Endurance dropped out of hyperspace directly above Kepler-9, where Foreman Zelk and his miners were still standing defiant against the hegemony blockade. The human warship was smaller than the hegemony battleships, but its arrival changed everything. "Hegemony vessels," Mingji transmitted, "you are attacking civilians under the protection of the Earth Defense Forces. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Commander Vextel laughed over the communication channel. "One small ship against our entire fleet? You must be joking." "I am not joking," Mingji replied calmly. "I am giving you one chance to leave peacefully." The hegemony commander opened fire. What happened next became legendary across the galaxy. The Endurance moved like liquid lightning, its ancient human technology making it faster and more maneuverable than anything the hegemony had ever seen. Its weapons, powered by technology that had been lost to the rest of the galaxy, cut through the hegemony shields like they were made of paper. Within 10 minutes, half the hegemony fleet was disabled, and the other half was retreating in panic. The surface of Kepler-9. The miners watched in amazement as their protector drove off ships that had seemed impossible to defeat. "How did they do that?" whispered one of the workers. Foreman Zelk smiled. "I think we are beginning to understand why the humans became legends." Similar battles were erupting across the galaxy as more human warships awakened and moved to protect their people. But the humans had an advantage that went beyond their superior technology. Everywhere they appeared, local populations joined. Them, the miners of Kepler-9, provided supplies and intelligence. The researchers of Echo 12 helped coordinate rescue operations. The farmers of Green Valley offered their worlds as bases for human operations. On Nexus Prime, the situation was becoming desperate for the hegemony. Supreme Commander Zekmoth realized that his forces were outnumbered not by human ships, but by the sheer number of alien species that had chosen to stand with humanity. "Sir," reported one of his officers, "we are receiving reports from 17 star systems. Local populations are refusing to cooperate with our operations. Some are actively resisting." Zekmoth's face darkened. "Then we use more force." "Sir, if we attack civilian populations, we will lose the support of the entire galaxy." "We have already lost their support," Zekmoth snarled. "The humans have poisoned them against us with their tricks and manipulation." But it was not tricks or manipulation that had won the aliens to humanity's side. It was simple gratitude. Every world where humans had awakened was a world where problems had been solved, conflicts had been ended, and lives had been improved. The galaxy was learning that the human legends had not been exaggerations. They had been understatements. On the bridge of the Endurance, Captain Mingji received a message from G1 on Nexus Prime. "The hegemony is preparing to attack the council building," G1 transmitted. "They have surrounded us with troops and heavy weapons. I do not think diplomacy is going to work." Mingji studied her tactical displays. Nexus Prime was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. Direct assault would be suicide, even for a ship with human technology. But there was another. Wei, Jiwan, she replied. I need you to do something that is going to seem very dangerous. I need you to walk outside and surrender to them. What? Giwan's voice was shocked. Trust me, Mingi said. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to let your enemy think they have already won. On Nexus Prime, Jiwan took a deep breath and walked toward the council building's main doors. Round her, hundreds of alien diplomats and workers watched in silence. Elder Kormath grabbed her arm. Child, what are you doing? What humans have always done, Jiwan said quietly. Whatever it takes to protect the people we care about. She opened the doors and stepped outside, her hands raised in surrender. Hegemony soldiers immediately surrounded her, their weapons pointed at her heart. Supreme Commander Zekmoth stepped forward, his face twisted with triumph. So he said, the great human infiltrator finally shows her true colors. Coward who surrenders when faced with real power. Guan looked directly into his eyes. I am not surrendering to you, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the plaza. I am surrendering for you, Zekmoth frowned. What does that mean? Guan smiled. It means you are about to learn why humans became legends in the first place. We do not win wars by being the strongest. We win them by being willing to sacrifice everything for what we believe is right. Above them, the sky began to fill with ships. Not just human vessels, but alien ships from dozens of species. The miners of Kepler-9, the researchers of Echo 12, the farmers of Green Valley, thousands of others who had decided that they would rather stand with the humans than watch them be destroyed. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy had become something much larger. It had become a battle for the soul of galactic civilization itself, and humanity was not fighting it alone. The moment Jiwan stepped out of the council building with her hands raised, everything changed. Supreme Commander Zekmoth thought he had won the greatest victory in hegemony history. He was wrong. Above Nexus Prime, the sky filled with ships from across the galaxy. But these were not warships coming to attack. They were rescue vessels, transport ships, and civilian craft. Thousands of alien beings who had been helped by humans were coming to return the favor. One of Zekmoth's officers said nervously, We are detecting over 3,000 ships approaching the planet. They are not responding to our warnings to stay away. Zekmoth looked up at the growing fleet with growing unease. What do they want? His answer came over every communication channel on the planet. It was Elder Kormoth's voice, broadcast from inside the council building. Citizens of the galaxy, the old being said, today we face a choice that will define us for generations. To come, do we choose fear of those who are different, or do we choose hope for what we can accomplish together? On the mining world of Kepler-9, Foreman Zelk heard the broadcast and made his choice. He activated his own communication system. This is Kepler-9, he announced. Engineer Kyung saved our world and our people. We stand with humanity. His message was picked up and repeated across the galaxy. On Research Station Echo 12, Chief Corvin declared his support for Dr. Nari. On the farming worlds, entire populations spoke up for the humans, who had ended their plant plagues and saved their crops. But the most powerful voice came from Broken Sky, where the impossible had happened. Commander Thek of the Korthok forces and Chief Solani of the Zentari spoke together for the first time in 60 years. We were enemies for 3 generations, they said in unison. Human Sangman showed us that we could be something better. We will not let anyone destroy the peace he helped us build. Supreme Commander Zekmoth realized that he was facing something he had never expected. It's not a human invasion, but a galactic uprising of ordinary people who refused to let their helpers be destroyed. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving over 10,000 messages of support for the humans. Civilian populations are threatening to revolt if we harm them. On the bridge of the Endurance, Captain Minji watched the communications flood in with wonder. She had expected to fight a military battle. Instead, she was witnessing something far more powerful. Captain, her tactical officer reported. Hegemony forces are requesting permission to withdraw from all human-occupied worlds. They say they cannot fight an entire galaxy. But Minji was not ready to accept surrender yet. She had one more demonstration to make. Open a channel to Supreme Commander Zekmoth, she ordered, on Nexus Prime. Zekmoth received the transmission with confusion and growing fear. Commander Minji's voice was calm and clear. You started this war because you believed humans were dangerous. You are right. We are dangerous. Not in the way you think. What do you mean? Zekmoth demanded. You're dangerous to hatred, Mingi replied. We are dangerous to oppression. We are dangerous to anyone who believes that fear should rule the galaxy instead of hope. As she spoke, something unprecedented began to happen. Human ships across the galaxy started powering down their weapons, not in surrender, but in demonstration. We could destroy your fleets, Minji continued. Our technology is superior. Tactics are better, but that is not who we are. Do not win wars by destroying our enemies. We win them by turning our enemies into friends. On Nexus Prime, Giwan was still surrounded by hegemony soldiers. But she was no longer their prisoner. She was their teacher. Look around you, she said to the soldiers. Look at the ships in the sky. Those are not human vessels coming to attack you. Those are the people you have sworn to protect, coming to protect us. What does that tell you about who the real danger is? One of the younger soldiers lowered his weapon. It tells me we made a mistake, he said quietly. Supreme Commander Zekmoth heard the soldier's words and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Doubt for his entire life. For his entire life, he had believed that strength came from force and fear. But looking at the scene around him, he began to understand that there was a different kind of strength. The strength to admit when you were wrong. All hegemony forces, he broadcast on his command frequency, stand down. Repeat, stand down, and withdraw to safe distances. But the humans were not finished. They had one more gift to give. Dr. Nari, freed from her research station, worked with alien scientists to develop new medicines that could help species across the galaxy. Engineer, Kyung shared terraforming techniques that could turn dead worlds into gardens. Physicist Woojin opened his laboratories to anyone who wanted to learn about advanced energy systems. And on Broken Sky, Sangmin did something that became legendary throughout the galaxy. He invited Supreme Commander Zekmoth to come and see what peace actually looked like. Zekmoth arrived expecting to find a trap. Instead, he found former enemies working together to build something beautiful. Korthok and Zentari children played together in schools that both species had built with their combined resources. Soldiers who had once tried to kill each other now worked side by side on construction projects. How is this possible? Zekmoth asked Sangmin. It is possible because they chose to make it possible, Sangmin replied. Just like you can choose to make it possible for your people to live without fear. For the first time in his military career. Supreme Commander Zekmoth felt tears on his face. 6 months later, the Galactic Council met in a new chamber. This one was larger, with seats for representatives from humanity and dozens of species that had never been included before. Ambassador Yeji, elected as humanity's first official representative, stood to address the assembly. She was young for such an important position, but she had the wisdom that came from understanding both human nature and the larger galaxy. We have learned something important these past months, she said to the gathered delegates. The old legends about humans were not myths, but they were also not complete. They spoke of our abilities, but they missed the most important thing about us. What is that? Asked Elder Cormouth, now serving as the council's honorary president. Are not special because we are stronger or smarter or more adaptable than other species, Yaji replied. We are special because we choose to use whatever abilities we have to help others, and that choice is not unique to humans. Every species in this chamber has the same choice. She gestured toward the viewing screen that showed the galaxy beyond. Look what we have accomplished together in just 6 months. 37 conflicts. Ended through negotiation. 15 dead worlds brought back to life through cooperative terraforming. New medicines that work for species that had never been able to help each other before. And all of this happened not because humans are mythical beings, but because ordinary people chose to work together. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had expected. Human awakening sites became centers of learning where species from across the stars came to share knowledge and solve problems together. Captain Minho, salvage operator who had found the first human ship, became the director of the new Galactic Archaeological Institute. His job was to search for other lost civilizations that might be sleeping in the dark between stars, waiting for their chance to return and contribute to galactic society. Dr. Hannah's secret network of human descendants came out of hiding and established schools where the history of humanity's exile was taught, alongside lessons about cooperation and understanding, and on a small world at the edge of known space, a memorial was built to commemorate the end of the Age of Myths. The inscription, written in the languages of 100 different species, read simply, "Here we learn that the greatest legends are not about beings who are different from us, but about beings who choose to be the best of what we all can become." Supreme Commander Zekamoth, now retired from military service, often visited that memorial. He had become a teacher, helping young soldiers from all species understand that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to build on quiet evenings. When the two moons of the memorial world rose over the peaceful landscape, visitors could sometimes hear children of many different species playing together. Their laughter echoed across the hills like music, a sound that had become the new anthem of a galaxy, that had learned to choose hope over fear. The humans had returned to the stars not as conquerors, but as teachers. And in teaching others, they had learned the most important lesson of all, that the greatest myths are the ones that inspire everyone to become legendary themselves. The galaxy was no longer the same. It was better. It was only the beginning.